Subscribe to MDR. Like for more.
Yello, this is MDR. It's a strange thing to revisit old Indian films because unlike the American or the Western society in general, Indian society has changed so much in just the past 5 years, forget even the past 1 decade or 2 decades like we are discussing today, that it's just a stark difference to see how world was at that time in the Indian landscape and how it is now these days. And Chalte Chalte is like a time capsule into what is the perfect ideal situation for a metropolitan couple to exist in the Indian society of that time. Chalte Chalte came out in 2003. I was barely out of my mother's womb at that time, as weird as that might sound, and I did not see this film for the first time in the theater or on the TV until very, very long. At least until 2008 or 9, which is probably the first time I saw this film on the television. Because I was literally not even able to speak when this film came out. And it's weird to watch this film going back into that time because 2003 was a special year for Shah Rukh Khan. I mean, my favorite film of all time, probably, of Shah Rukh's, Kal Ho Na Ho, came out that year. And it seems like in 2003, Shah Rukh did very less films, and that was probably because he was very dedicated to the shooting of Veer Zara. And in that time, he just happened to do Kal Ho Na Ho, and that just became one of my favorite films of all time. I guess you could say that this is Shah Rukh in his prime, because he was doing amazing stuff at that time. And yeah, there was a downslide after this for a while, for at least a couple of years until he bounced back with Om Shanti Om. And then, really, you can just find periods of Shah Rukh Khan's career in which he goes down and up in the same year. Shah Rukh Khan has never had a very consistent career. You can never say that he's had a phase, a phase of just having back-to-back hits. He's always had some flops and some hits in the same year. Some of his most iconic films that we know these days are all of the films that were followed up by either flops or were just coming off of flops that Shah Rukh Khan had put out. And I guess Chalte Chalte is not that fondly remembered, although this film still gets a pretty average rating. A pretty good rating, to be honest, for a film like this. And the speciality of this film's production was obviously Aziz Mirza. If you do not know, Aziz Mirza is one of those unsung heroes that made a lot of classics for Shah Rukh Khan right from his first year. I mean, just look at the films he made for Shah Rukh before Chalte Chalte. I mean, if you go to his IMDb, you can just see that he directed around 12 episodes of Circus, which is one of the first series of Shah Rukh Khan. And then he made Raju Ban Gaya Gentleman in the debut year of Shah Rukh Khan in 1992, which was his only other hit in 1992 besides Deewana, because Dil Aashna Hai and Chamatkar did not do that greatly. You could say that they were just about enough. And then he went on to make 2 films that did not do great at all at the box office but have come to be loved over the years. These were in 1997 Yes Boss with Shah Rukh Khan and Juhi Chawla, and then in 2000 Fir Bhi Dil Hai Hindustani, again with Juhi Chawla. One of the soft spots of an Aziz Mirza film has been the music. If you look at the catalogue of the music of Aziz Mirza's films, all of them which he has made with Shah Rukh Khan, especially before Chalte Chalte, they've all been very upbeat, humorous, rather cute songs. And there is a nice sync between Shah Rukh and Aziz whenever they've made a film together. I'm not gonna say I've watched every single one of these films yet. I am gonna cover them for a separate series called The Evolution that I'm making right now. But I have listened numerous times and grown up with many of the songs from these films as a child, especially I Am the Best. I love that song and listen to it almost every day. It's a pretty weird complex I've got. I'm not really that confident, trust me. But because Aziz and Shah Rukh Khan have always collaborated with such films, it is quite surprising to see the kind of misplaced and misjudged plot of this film that he has made. It's almost like there was a certain jealousy in Aziz against Adi Chopra, because Adi made DDLJ, which became Shah Rukh Khan's most iconic film. And following that, Aziz tried in 2 different collaborations to make something just as grand, something just as amazing. But it just did not turn out that well. So what he tried to do instead was make sort of a sequel to DDLJ. I would say a spiritual successor of a kind, where this film serves as what might happen if DDLJ was more realistic and was more grounded in the everyday life of Indians, whilst still using those convenient plot devices and fantasy-like settings and approach to its storytelling. Chalte Chalte does this through and throughout. But if in a line you asked me what is the plot of Chalte Chalte, I don't really know what to say. Look, if you have seen this film before, I'm gonna not really delve into the details of the story, but if you haven't seen it, let me just read off the IMDb plot synopsis. But maybe let's make this a little bit more interesting. Tell me if I'm telling you the plot synopsis of DDLJ or of Chalte Chalte. Don't go on your IMDb right now, okay? You better not click off this. I warn you. Alright. A man pursues a woman who is already engaged and eventually gets married to her. Differences between the two lead to a bitter separation that threatens to destroy their relationship forever. Sounds quite like DDLJ, doesn't it? But it's Chalte Chalte. See what I'm talking about? It's like the first half of what this sounds like is DDLJ, and then the second half is sort of a follow-up of what might happen, because SRK and Kajol's character in that film DDLJ just about meet each other and fall in love with each other as if they are lovers since birth who are now being separated all of a sudden. I guess you could say that that was one of the faults in DDLJ, but that's one of the gripes that comes with a cinematic experience. You can't make the audience get into a story completely forgetting everything else if you keep cutting between timelines and telling them 6 years have passed, 5 years have passed, 3 years have passed. The only 2 films that have been able to do that convincingly are when Billy met Sally, and The Shining. And none of those films should be compared to Chalte Chalte, for better or for worse. But what one? That I don't know. When I try and remember the highlights from this film, I only see the songs and some of the bits that SRK does in this film. Some of those funny scenes with Rani Mukerji, where they're both having sort of a banter here and there, or just scenes where we can really let the two breathe into their characters, because to be honest, there is not a lot of consistency with their characters. If you see in the beginning, Rani Mukerji's character is supposed to be this non-residential Indian born in Greece or whatever. Actually, she is just supposed to be Greek. And then when she comes to India, she speaks with an accent.
Shut up, Mr. Cleaner. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the driver. Cue, driver.
And so does Shah Rukh Khan's character. Because he is supposed to be a full-fledged Punjabi dude. Like...
Hello?
But if you see them talking 20 minutes later, both of them have lost their accents. I mean...
वैसे तुम्हारे पास?
मेरे पास वो एक सिक्का घुमाना नहीं है?
I mean, that's like the basic thing, right? So how can they mess that up? You could say that that is because of the really weird production of this film. Some things happened that are rather interesting from a gossip point of view, like how Aishwarya was first supposed to be this movie's lead heroine, and then it was replaced by Rani because of apparently, allegedly, a scuffle that broke out, when Salman Khan showed up on the set. I don't know what to say about that. But besides that, SRK and Rani hold this film's story together. Because to be honest, there isn't much of a story. It's like the first half of DDLJ, but just done in a different way. And then the second half is just taken off of any TV soap drama. Oh, I'm going in debt. I've lost my job. Oh, really? Oh, honey, I'll help you. Don't worry, I'll just borrow money from my ex-boyfriend who was supposed to marry me that you stole me away from. Really? That is supposed to be the main conflict of the second half of this film? If you think that this is just how puny the plot can get of this film, there are so many other mistakes that it makes. And canonically, they only meet each other 4 times before they fall in love and get married. And yeah, you could say that, well, it is stretched out for over an hour, but most of that is a build up to a song, and then the aftermath of the song, and then the build up to a song, and then the aftermath to a song. I'm not even kidding with you. That's how it works. You could say that most Bollywood films from the time were like this, so really MTR, you're really gonna nitpick that movie so much? I mean, it's just fun to do it, so why not, right? I find it completely weird how I compared Kal Ho Na Ho, which came out in the same year as Chalte Chalte, to La La Land and talked about how that scene in the beginning, just even though there is so much effort there, is just a bunch of people dancing on a highway without anything to do with the plot of the movie going forward, instead literally just stopping the characters from going forward. Here, that same thing happens. And it's just wowed me now that I revisit the film, thinking just how many people have debated that that is the scene that makes that film being Oscar worthy. In that sense, then Chalte Chalte did the very same thing 13 years before La La Land did. And they did it very convincingly, and that too, taking the film's narrative forward because the two characters actually happen to meet when the song ends. And it's just not random with the film's title credits coming up. But besides that, I don't really like this film a lot when it's in the exteriors because the locations still seem pretty claustrophobic to me. I don't know, maybe it's just the way that the film has been photographed. I love the interiors, however, because the rooms are much spaced out and the colors in most of the rooms seem to be a pretty nice palette. Some rooms even reminiscent of Monica's room from Friends. But I gotta give props to whoever stylized both Rani and Shah Rukh in this film because they just look so good in normal clothes. You know, they're not in any kind of eccentric clothing or some sort of a theme clothing based on whatever film they're doing. Here, they're just in normal clothes, like normal people. And there is a certain charm to them when they are like that. Because when they are in those kind of clothes, they become more believable. It's not like those weird denim jackets ripped off of Brad CDs from America like they were in Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. Here, it's just simple, plain stuff, and it looks pretty good. Especially in songs, they really seem to contrast there, and that is when the movie is at its best. I gotta say, most of the memories that I have of this film are etched into my brain off of the many great songs found in this film. That is, like I said before, one of the many standout points of an Aziz Mirza film. And maybe that doesn't have a lot to do with just him, but at the same time, you can't take that away from the choice and selection and the whole process of shooting the songs and somehow making a narrative around it. I mean, he is the director after all. Jatin and Lalit did the music for this film, who are the same guys who did the music for, well, you guessed it, DDLJ. But if you go on Spotify, you can see that there's another person who did this, which is Adesh Srivastav. And 3 songs from this film are really iconic to me. First is second being and third being. The rest of the songs are just about okay-ish to me, but I really like Sunona Sunona. That has to be the most iconic one for me. But listening to songs like Tauba Tumhare Ishare and Lai Veena Kai are just very nostalgic to me because I'd forgotten that those songs were from this film. And I used to dance to these songs in my dance classes when I was a kid. And I guess that's a nice memory to revive, right? When you were young and free and just careless. That's the kind of vibe that these old films ooze out of you. Those days when you didn't have to worry so much and everything was just sort of working out on its own. Things were fine. You know, like the film's title says, Chalte Chalte, almost making it sound like that things will be fine if you keep walking and walking on, like keep on keeping up. But as much as I love all those memories that it made for me, would I recommend this film to somebody who has not seen this film in the past 20 years or in a long time? I guess yeah, if you have those memories to revive for you. It was so nice for me to watch this film, having all those memories in the bag. But this time I happened to rewatch it with GDR, Girly Detective Run. If you haven't subscribed to her channel, do it right now, because she's gonna be angry at you if you don't. And she watched it for the first time. And for me, this was a second rewatch, but in a way, a first rewatch because it had been so long. Of course, I had some memories and not a complete fresh look into this film. But she loved this film. She thought that it was a great film. But she thinks that about every film. And I guess if, as a couple, you watch this film, there is a lot to like here. There's a lot of relatable stuff in this film. Some of the dialogue when they're bickering about each other or just having a little rant or, you know, sometimes even when they shout or just little everyday banter of how two people can coexist despite having differences if they just are making the effort. That's what that film talks about. Chalte Chalte is not completely the biggest hit of its year and not even one of the greatest films of its time, but it made profit, and that's what matters, at least in the movie business.
मनु भाई मुझे नहीं मालूम बिजनेस कैसे होता मगर प्यार तो ऐसे ही होता.
But as a viewer, is this a product worth giving your time to? Let's be honest, this is 2 hours 47 minutes. This is not a short film. But at the same time, there's just a lot of good things that it gives you. There's a lot of good vibes, the upbeat songs, even the downbeat ones are just so nice to listen to. And just the photography of those songs is so amazingly done that it just has a complete feel to it. You go from a country outside India, coming back to India, go into a park sometimes, and then having fights in your apartment, to having a party, to running a business. There's just so much imagery here that you explore that just as a visual treat, the film is a 2003 spectacle to go back and revisit. And I guess that's where the film shines. I guess the story isn't that important because at the end of the day, what's in a story if it does not have the charm of SRK, at least when it comes to a SRK film? SRK has been able to pull off many films with average stories with just his charm, and he does that here, not taking away anything from the side characters who all do an amazing job, especially the traffic police guy who initially we think is a weirdo and too much of a strange guy, but slowly wins you over with his weirdness. You know, he's a likable guy and he does it very well. I wish that I had seen him in more films in the 2000s. I don't know what that actor is doing now, but I wish him the best. I don't know what he ended up doing, but he was great in this film. I guess the weird thing about this film is the same thing I like about Jab Tak Hai Jaan. I like thinking about Chalte Chalte more than I would like to watch the film, because my expectations go downhill every time I do watch the film, and I feel like maybe this would be better to watch in 2 runs, you know, first half and then second half. But at the same time, the film somewhere along the line wins me over. And I guess what part exactly is that? I do not want to know, because if I did, then maybe I would never want to watch Chalte Chalte again. I don't think I'll watch this film again anytime soon, but I will revisit it when the time is right. But until then, I'm gonna keep this one in the locker room. But at the same time, now that it's been 20 years this film has come out, it's just nice to see how society worked back then. How borrowing money from your ex, which is still a weird thing, back then how serious it could be, and how even though 20 years have passed, the society is still gonna look at it the same way. Your partner is gonna still look at it the same way. Some things, I guess, never change, and maybe that's one of the good things about the film. That while some of the other things it tries to tackle have not aged that well, maybe the stalker-like romance that Shah Rukh does would be offensive to a lot of people. Why is he chasing an engaged girl? Well, he did that in DDLJ, which is the most iconic romance film ever made. He did chase a to-be engaged girl whose engagement is already confirmed. So you know what I mean. It's the same thing, practically. Knowing that, he still does it. I guess that's the pursuit of love. If you really love someone, you can do it. And what part of it is right or wrong, that cannot be judged on the basis of just one tale. Every situation is unique. And that's what Chalte Chalte does. It does that and then shows you what can happen if you do that. It does not entirely glorify it, but it helps you settle with it. In a way, Chalte Chalte does do what it sets out to do. Yeah, it is a film that serves as a spiritual successor to DDLJ, showing the consequences of such a love story if the two lovers are living in a normal metropolitan society, not in some high concept, weird, fantastical world like DDLJ. But because DDLJ does that with conviction, I guess it gets away with it. I mean, it obviously does because it's been just the most loved film. But Chalte Chalte does not do it to that extent. And I guess that's where the difference lies. Where DDLJ convinces the audience of its plot, Chalte Chalte just makes sure that the message is heard. And hey, it was a 3 times profitable film at the time it came out, so I guess it's not that bad, right? Chalte Chalte 20 years later is still very much a watchable film. A film that you should watch if you like Shah Rukh, or if you like Rani, or if you just like watching a plain Bollywood entertainment.
मनु भाई, मुझे नहीं मालूम बिजनेस कैसे होता, मगर प्यार तो ऐसे ही होता।
अरे पथरा, प्यार ऐसा होता है, बोलता है प्यार ऐसे होता है, प्यार ऐसे होता है।